Good evening. I think I put a video a few weeks ago about cooking porridge in the Zimbabwean way, which is traditional breakfast in Zimbabwe. The purpose of the video wasn't necessarily to show you how we cook as Zimbabweans, but how proud we are with our own food. But at the same time, I think the important thing about that video was to attract people to my page. My background is not cooking. For those of you who went to school with me know that my background isn't cooking. Probably if I did cooking, I was in Form 2 back then at Charangano Secondary School. But it didn't last long because we didn't have the facilities to do the cooking. But as I grew older, my passion was in education, being a teacher at some point. But then I grew out of all that and become more interested in politics, which is why I did political science and international relations degrees, because I had a passion for politics. So for me to get to the point of where exactly where I want to go with this page is there's a lot that we need to talk as Zimbabweans. But talk as Zimbabweans, I think probably is narrowing. I think for me, my interest is in African politics in general. And by African politics, I'm not saying because I'm Zimbabwean politics, my politics should focus on Zimbabwe, but I'm focusing on the whole continent. There are a lot of other issues, but the interesting thing about the issues that affect Africa is that they are all to do with colonial legacies. And each one of them, except for those countries that we think were not colonized, as Ethiopia, which was colonized because the people that occupied Ethiopia were not originally from Africa; they were from outside in the Middle East. Those are the people that took over and colonized Ethiopia. So the whole of Africa was colonized at some point. So my interest is not cooking. Don't get me wrong. My interest is in the politics of Africa. I think the way our states, the challenge that each and every state in Africa is facing, from economics, politics, and the social aspect. That's where my interest is. Then also, my interest on the whole continent is the functions of this, say, institutions of global governance. We know in Africa we have at the top we've got AU, then we've got other individual regional institutions of global governance, and how they work to stabilize the continent, how they work to unite the continent, and how they work to realize the economic fortunes of the continent. That's where my interest and my passion is. It's not about cooking. But as we all know, if you are going to a meeting with people, if you are going to anywhere, I think the first thing that you have, the meeting is going to go ahead and be interesting to the people that are watching or that are listening or that will be in the audience, you have to start with something to eat. So don't get me wrong, my passion is not in cooking. My passion is about African politics and the challenges Africa as a whole is facing. From South Africa to the west, the east and the north and West Africa, the whole continent interests me as an African. So don't be surprised next time when you start seeing me posting things about the politics of the continent, the challenges each and every state is facing, which I think a lot of people seem to be ignoring. And that's the worst thing about Africa. We don't discuss important issues. We're interested in welcoming visitors. We're interested in standing as individuals, minding our own business when the continent is in peril. The problem with Africa is because we are not debating the real issues that affect our continent, and we expect other people to talk about Africa when we are not talking about. We talk about Africa and the problem that Africa faces when we hear that on the news, on the BBC, Sky, CNN, and Al Jazeera. We start thinking, oh, that's Africa. But it's because we Africans, the people that should be debating all these issues, we are not taking time, probably too busy to be focusing on our continent. I mean, on social media, don't get me wrong, we have got parliaments throughout the continent, people discussing this, discussing that. But we as individual citizens of Africa, or as individual Africans, wherever we are based, we need to engage in this, the politics of the continent. So that's why my passion is. At the moment, we know there are wars, we will know there are political instabilities in each and every part of the continent anyway. It's not just one country. Each and every country has got its own challenges, but there are similarities in terms of the challenges that the continent is facing. And which is why I think it's important for Africans to have a debate, talk about the continent, engage more with the politics of the continent than what about us as individuals. At the moment, we have got a lot that's happening. We have got Chinese investment in China coming into Africa. There's a lot that the implication of Chinese coming into, we know, we need to unpick those. Is it good for the continent? Is it benefiting the continent? Is it different? And if it's different, what are the differences? And if it's not, what are the similarities with the previous, investors, foreign directors of investment that was coming to Africa? So how should politicians, because in debating as individuals online, we are not planning to unseat a government, we are not planning to remove so and so from power, but we are just debating as Africa to conscientize everybody, to bring up to date everyone who is African, to get the interest in talking about the continent as a whole. Like I said, Chinese investment. We know there is a lot of money that's coming from China, but there is also a lot that's going to China. And it's not China, there's a lot that's going to Dubai and other Asian countries. We know we've got relations with other continents. What are the implications of our relations with other continents, other countries outside Africa? How protected are we as a continent? Are we safe as a continent? Are we strong as a continent? Because I think for me, if you ask me, we are so divided. I mean, we are so divided. In one country can sign a bilateral relations with China, with another country. We are so different. And I think the AU, as I know it, it looks up to the European Union as a model. But the way it works is so different, because the European Union, as it is, it works it represents the interests of Europe. Whereas the African Union is just some group with some official somewhere. But each and every country, which is also an affiliate of the organization, is doing whatever it wants and can sign anything, can do anything without the AU being overseeing all of that. So what are the implications of that way of doing business in Africa? So for me, when you see me posting stuff on my page, it's more like trying to bring you to the page, so that when in the near future we can start debating real issues, not cooking. Real issues, not cooking. Real issues, not just being on live to talk about nothing. Like I said, my interest, my passion is in the politics of the continent. I don't want to be a president of any country, but I'm more interested in focusing on the issues that affect Africa from Cape to Cairo, as we used to know it. South Africa has got issues, Botswana the same, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, and all these countries have individual issues. But there are similarities in most of these issues, all to do with the history of the continent and how the journey it has traveled to be where it is today. And while it's good for us to wait for the politician to decide, we as Africans, we need to be debating these issues on a daily basis. I'm not saying we should leave everything that we do to talk about this, but let's engage in meaningful debates for the benefit of the future of the continent. Are we safe? Are we better off now that we have got relations with China? Are we better off that we are having FDI, foreign direct investment from China? Are we better now because most of our imports, about 16% of them, are going to China? Are we better now that most of the flights that leave the continent are mostly going to the east? What are the implications of our relations with China and the rest of the world? So it's something that we need to talk as Africans, which is why I'm coming to you tonight to say, guys, join me on my channel, because very soon we'll be starting real debates about Africa and the future of the continent, not individual country, the future of the continent as a whole. So when you see me posting, when you see me putting posts on Facebook, I'm doing it to bring you, to get your attention to come to the page, because important debates are coming. I'm not a cook. I never went to a culinary school. I post stuff on Facebook to attract your attention. So don't mind my cooking, guys. My passion is the politics of the continent. Thank you.